Welcome to Nerd Social. I am Nathan.
And I'm Colin.
So, tonight we're going to talk about What If episode, I think we're on 5 now?
5, I think, yes.
Yeah. And Titans episode 7. It's going to be more of an informal conversation than we usually have, but we will, as always, give our spoiler-free thoughts about the episodes, and then we'll get into more spoiler talk and also maybe some predictions for the future based upon what happened in the episode. Colin, what did you think of the 5th episode of What If? Simply titled What If Zombies?
Yeah, that basically summed it up for the most part. It was a really action-packed, gut-wrenching, like all the emotions, just like from highs to lows to depressing. Mm-hmm. It was almost like it was Infinity War all over again, and some parts of it was just so depressing and so sad. Mm-hmm. And I just think that they're just touching all of the emotional points throughout much better than it was last week in terms of, because the Doctor Strange episode would definitely just tore at the heartstrings. This was a lot of different types of emotions, and it was just a throw. I just think that I think that so basically my initial reaction is that it's definitely, I would say, in my opinion, better than the previous episode, and they're just raising the bar in terms of Marvel being just consistently good about all their material. And for this one, it was just a range of emotions. I just felt like there were times in which I felt I was in an Infinity War all over again, watching that again. Mm-hmm. And there were times where it was depressing, it was sad, it was triumphant, it was heroic. And it was just overall, I think they just got it down to a science for the most part in terms of just the brilliant storytelling, the animation, the action that's involved with it. And they did it within 30 minutes, which is really impressive stuff. And we haven't gotten on What If. I mean, some people think that they don't really like the animation too much, but yeah, it was there's definitely some iterations. I think we talked about it in a chat to some of the animations that we've seen with Invincible as well. So it's very similar to that type of theme in some ways, but we'll get into it later on.
Yeah, I definitely liked the episode. I don't know if it's as bloody or as difficult to watch because it's still on Disney Plus. After there is, even though we're talking about zombies, after there is gore, there's gore in the way that they usually have gore in superhero properties. If people are dying, unless it's like the Guardian, the Suicide Squad movie that just came out recently. If people are dying, they're usually not human. So it's not, you can still technically watch this with children, but some really graphic things happen to the zombies. So maybe older children, maybe middle school, high school children. It was a good episode. I think I liked it a lot. I don't know that it was that scary. Maybe that's because it is a Disney property and they're never going to get as scary as you would say on, I don't know, HBO Max or something like that. But it was still fun. So, and there are zombie movies in that vein. So there's like the Shaun of the Dead kind of movies.
So, what's the plan? Bash him in the head. That seems to work out.
Mm-hmm. And they're also like Zombieland.
You guys want some Purell?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
This took some inspiration from Zombieland pretty much at the beginning of this episode as well. So it was more of a zombie comedy, which also sometimes has its scary parts as well, or its spooky parts as well. It definitely hit a whole lot of zombie tropes within the episode. And yeah, it was very well written, and you got to see characters that have popped up in the MCU before, of course, because all the characters that show up in these episodes are characters that show up in the MCU before, but they're working together in a way that you never see. These are pairings or groupings that you didn't get to see in the movies, which is interesting to see because you always wonder how would they work together, how would they interact to accomplish a common goal, and you got to see that in this What If scenario. So it was a really good episode. I don't know that I liked it as better than the last week. Just, I don't know, maybe it was just my sensibilities. The bleakness at the end.
That was something. I was just like, oh man, that's why I mentioned Infinity War. So I was like, That's very depressing. I'm like, oh man.
So yeah, I think that I definitely like the episode though, and I think that they're pushing the envelope and they're trying to be as creative and as interesting as they can be with these stories, because there's no consequences. They can kill off anyone they want to, because they can just start over in a different universe next week. So with different circumstances. So
that's very Rick and Morty.
Yeah. So it was a good episode. We should start to get into why the episode was interesting and good. But to do that, we need to start spoiling the episode. So at this point, if you haven't seen the episode, go see the episode, because we both like it. It's really good. I think you'll have some fun with it, and come back and join us for the spoiler conversation. So after this point, spoilers, spoiler alert. All right. So I don't have images this week. So where do you want to start when talking about this episode?
I just think that the whole premise at the very beginning of how this kind of came about, it reminded me a lot of the Will Smith one. I think there's like older iterations of I Am Legend as well. But the whole kind of bleakness of dystopia and what we're living in right now as well with the pandemic, it really reminded me of that, and that's kind of like the depressing part, and just the whole premise of it, just that Janet Van Dyne was the carrier, was patient zero basically, right. And Ant-Man is definitely not probably near the top of terms of MCU movies, but right. And it makes it a very good kind of introduction to what if this happened with Ant-Man and the Wasp rather than what happened in the MCU movie Ant-Man and the Wasp. So that was very interesting in itself. The second thing was having that Grand Central scene, which reminded me of the Avengers scene in Grand Central. And it also reminded me, because I lived in New York for a few years, so I visited Grand. It was very eerie in those moments, because I visited that station like every day when I went to school there in New York. And then the third thing was just the ending. They had some hope and some optimism, and then you saw zombie Thanos, and I was like, oh man, they basically good, and the Watcher just sat there not doing anything about zombie Thanos. It's like, oh, that's not good, and who knows what's going to happen with those three, with Scott and Charlie. So.
You mentioned Ant-Man and the Wasp not being like top. I think I just now redid my list of MCU movies, because I just saw Shang-Chi, and it's near the bottom of my list. But Marvel keeps trying to make it very important, because it was pivotal. What happened in that? If you didn't watch that movie, you're a little bit lost.
Yeah, you don't know what's going on.
And Endgame, and also a lot of the other multiverse stuff. So you have to watch it, even though it's not super great. It's not a terrible movie, but if you're ranking MCU movies, if I'm ranking MCU movies, it's near the bottom of for me. So going back to that, because you can't do. It's funny. One of the jokes in that movie was Scott saying, "Are you guys just putting quantum in front of everything?" So they're basically it's a quantum virus, and you can use that to tell anything or say it or to explain anything, and that's what they did in Endgame, and that's sort of what they're doing here. Janet has a quantum virus. She gives it to Hank. Hank and Janet come back, and they start the plague on Earth. Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't sure. Do you think that? It wasn't clear to me that the zombies were inside of Wakanda or outside of Wakanda. It looked like they were outside of Wakanda to me, but they were. But like the last shot, like the shot of the force field, it looked like they were outside. But the final shot, it looked like he had the city of Wakanda, the Wakandan city in his backgrounds, like he was inside. So it was unclear to me whether or not he got inside or not. So I don't know what.
No, I would not put that. Yeah, I would not put it past him if he got inside somehow. Yeah. It was depressing. It was very depressing.
It was depressing. He is the potential of him destroying the universe, whereas last week the universe was actually destroyed. But yes, I really enjoyed the way that they started the beginning of the episode as well. It was basically the beginning of Infinity War. So Bruce comes back, and he crashes through this and comes into him, usually like he did in the movie, but no one's there. He goes out into the street, and we get Ebony Maw and Cull Obsidian on the street, just like in the movie. But then everything changes after he crashes through the ceiling, and no one's there to greet him. But yeah, it's interesting how they're using Tony Stark in these episodes, because he doesn't really get to speak, but he's definitely always there. He also Captain America doesn't really get to speak. I guess they're the two heads of the Avengers, but they found how to write very interesting and compelling stories over the last 6 episodes without censoring them. I know that there's an episode coming up where Tony's going to be censored, because Tony and Killmonger is going to be censored, but yeah, Tony's already a zombie at this point. And what's also interesting, and I think this is the case, and I haven't read the comics, the Marvel zombie comics. I just read articles about them. Apparently, that's the premise they have here is the same premise that they have in the comics, is that they keep their intelligence, or keep some of their intelligence. Actually, in the comics, I believe they can actually speak, whereas here they're not speaking. So they have reduced intelligence, but they still have some intelligence, and they also have their abilities as well to a certain extent as well. Now, Hawkeye isn't as good a shot as he is when he isn't a zombie, because he missed, I think, in the subway. But in general, they have their abilities, and they're using those abilities to eat people.
My gosh. Like Wong had a chunk of, I don't know who it was. He had a chunk of
it's Cull Obsidian's arm. He was eating a chunk of Cull Obsidian's arm. So yeah,
and then like Tony, I think Tony got decapitated. Was he?
No, it was Wong. So Wong opened used his sling ring to open up a portal behind Bruce, and then Clokey came to the rescue to help out Bruce, and he pulled Wong back through the portal, and then when the portal closed, it cut off Wong's head. So yeah, that's what happened. So Wong got killed. Yeah. Wong got killed in a similar way that he cut off Cull Obsidian's arm in the Infinity War movie. So that was the first like very gory death. I guess them eating Cull Obsidian and Ebony Maw was gory, but you saw that from a distance. Like Bruce was like, "What's happened?" What? Yeah, but the head popped off right next to him, and
that was not cool. And then I don't know. Tony died a terrible death too. I don't remember how he died, but it was pretty gruesome too.
I don't remember Tony actually dying. I think what happened was that Clokey got him out of there with the help of Spider-Man. Spider-Man got them out, and then they went to their headquarters, which basically is a bunch of subway cars that were suspended between some buildings. So I don't think anyone else is as strong as he is on the team there. Well, no, I assume he got them up there by himself. Like so we have Sharon Carter, we have Happy Hogan, Kurt, I think his name is.
Yeah, David
Dastmalchian from Ant-Man, for Ant-Man and Boss. He plays a Eastern European guy, and he does some foreshadowing later on in the episode that as soon as he said it, I was like,
oh no,
yeah. So
we also have
Bucky as well, but yeah, Bucky isn't strong enough to. So I guess Peter got them up there himself somehow. I mean, he has super strength. So their makeshift headquarters is a bunch of cars, because the zombies can't walk out to them. But although Tony could fly up to them, so if he wanted to get up there, he could get up there.
Yeah, we forget about Hope as well. Hope is the big character in this episode, and then Hope was one of the original Avengers actually, and it was great to see that she was taking much more of a leadership role in this episode. Well, it was in some ways.
It was Janet that was one of the original Avengers, not Hope. In the comics.
You're right.
So yeah, I forgot about Hope, and yeah, Hope was one of the main characters in this episode, and she actually could have picked up a bunch of cars and put them in the air so he could wet them up. So that's probably how they got it done. So yeah, when she got using the reverse powers of the pin particles, because she does that later on in the episode. Yeah, so they have the nod to Zombieland when Peter does his introduction and his rules to zombie apocalypse.
Step 1, long sleeves.
Do I really have to be wearing this?
It's very similar.
The humorous part of the whole episode, the more humorous stuff.
Yeah, I forget the name of the guy in Zombieland. I think it was Oklahoma or Dallas or something like that. Or they all remember. They all had city names, but I forget what city. The guy played by Jesse Eisenberg. He was the one. It was basically he was doing his Jesse Eisenberg's zombie explanation.
Rule number 1 for surviving Zombieland: cardio.
So we got that, and then they found this. Then they found a message that maybe there's a cure, and it was at Camp Lehigh. Camp Lehigh, which we've seen many times now. It was in, first time we saw it was in the first Avenger with Captain America, the First Avenger. Then we saw it again in Captain America Winter Soldier after he went back and he was in Armin Zola was his brain put in the computer. We also saw it in Endgame because they went back in time and went there as well.
Yep.
And we saw it, of course, in the first episode of What If. So we go back to Camp Lehigh a lot. So so they have to get there though, and they don't have transportation. They have a car, a car, which they use to make a very funny sight gag kill of a zombie because they drive to Grand Central Station to take a train. Because I assume like they don't have a ship because all the Avengers that actually could fly a ship were turned. And
they were in San Francisco and all the Avengers died basically.
Yeah.
With the exception of T'Challa, basically, everyone died. And
they can't really drive on the road because all the zombies are on the road. So I guess the plan is to take the subway to New Jersey. Which is, I guess, makes sense, sort of.
Although it doesn't make sense in real life because they don't go out of Grand Central, actually.
Right.
People live in New York that they don't go. The ones to Jersey, it rarely does. It usually goes out of the Penn Station. But anyways,
but
semantics.
But Penn Station is an ugly station compared to Grand Central Station, which is probably why they chose Grand Central Station. It's also, like you said, it showed up in the Avengers movie as well. So they were trying to in this universe, you can get to New Jersey from. So they split up. Even though Peter says we shouldn't split up, Okoye has an interesting joke about
reality
shows, which was cool. and then they have because they broke up. There's a bunch of gruesome deaths later on. So Falcon, it's like Falcon in the main MCU universe gets to become Captain America. In this universe, he gets cut in half by Okoye.
Supposed best friend. I mean. Yeah, by supposed best friend, basically.
What do you mean by Okoye?
His frenemy. It was Okoye who killed. Okay,
it was Okoye who cut him in half. It was Bucky. It was Bucky.
A snide remark afterwards.
It was Bucky who didn't care. But at this point, you have to remember that this was like before anything that happened in Falcon and Winter Soldier. So they don't like each other. So that was the response that you would expect from him. So Okoye cuts Sam in half. Then Happy gets killed or by Hank. Sorry, not by Hank. By Clint. Clint shoots an arrow through his shoulder and pulls him and turns him. So Happy is wearing Tony's wristwatch repulsor, which we saw in Civil War.
Yep.
We saw that in Civil War. So he's using that and making sound. And even when he gets zombified, he's saying bland.
That was really creative. That actually was really cool.
Yeah.
He's still making the sounds even though he's a zombie. Wow. That's really comedic. Good timing.
So Sharon uses that against him and he shoots Happy in the head. We don't see his head explode, but we expect that's what the head explodes. So Sharon gets away, and while Peter is trying to get the train to work with Hope and who else is on the train with her?
It was Bruce. Bruce was there, and also David's character.
I think it's Kurt.
Polka Dot Man.
I think his name is Kurt, right?
Kurt.
So Kurt, Bruce, and Hope are on the train, and Peter's outside trying to give it a bunch of potential energy. Basically, he tells them to put the brake on, and he's going to basically slingshot the thing by them taking off the brake. So that works, and they get away from the zombie hordes. But
Sharon died though before they
escape, and they all get on the train, but they go through a tunnel, and then we find that Captain America is on the train. So they're already moving. They're already moving when Captain America gets on the train.
You're right.
So Captain America gets on the train, and he's the one who takes out Sharon, and that's when we get the Bucky zombie Cap fight.
Right.
Bucky wins. He catches the shield just like he does in Winter Soldier. And he uses the shield to cut him in half, and he said, I guess it's the end of the line. Because another callback to all what they said, I'm with you until the end of the line, which is depressing and also, I guess, funny a little bit, because they're also on a train, and when you're talking about end of the line, it's a train. Yeah, so Hope flies into zombie Janet's mouth and explodes her and gets her guts all over everywhere. This is what I'm talking about, where it could be like as bad as Invincible if it was human guts, but all their blood is black. And they always do. They're doing this to show that it was real. It's like earlier when they blew up the Hulk and he turned into a mist instead of turning into a bunch of green guts, which is what you would expect would actually happen. Mm-hmm. So she gets Sharon all over her, and it gets when she does that, she also gets. So we get another zombie trope when someone is bitten or cut, and they're going to slowly turn. That shows up in every single version of the zombie lore. It was
also in Blade as well.
It was Blade. It was
Blade. The first one, I think, because the female lead got bitten, I think, and was slowly trying to turn into vampire.
Yeah,
at that time. But yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So then we get a little bit of heartfelt stuff. I think we get a nod to Uncle Ben, and the internet says that this is the first time we've actually heard him mention Uncle Ben, because he never mentions it in any of the movies he's in. He's been in 5 movies now. He's been in Infinity War, Endgame, his two movies, and then in Civil War. But he's never mentioned Uncle Ben. So he mentions that he tries to be upbeat because he's lost so many people. So that was a nice little part of this episode as well. And then Hope uses her powers to get them the rest of the way, because the potential energy that Peter built up eventually runs out. It only gets them so far. It doesn't get them all the way to New Jersey. But there's a field of zombies, which is another zombie trope. Field of zombies you have to get through is another zombie trope.
World War Z, all those, yeah.
So she makes herself bigger, and she walks over the field, and then she collapses and I think she turns at that point. The end of this episode, they definitely went in a different way than I expected at the end of this. That was a lot of plot to get through. There was a lot of stuff that happened, and then at the end of this episode, it even takes even a completely different turn after that, especially after seeing WandaVision and what Wanda went through for her love for Vision. So they get there and they notice that the zombies aren't coming through the fence, even though there's a giant hole. And this is when Kurt says Baba Yaga, which is basically a witch in whatever Eastern European, because Baba Yaga, he said in the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, but also you hear it in John Wick. They call him Baba Yaga. So I immediately thought witch. I was like, oh, Scarlet Witch is here. But we see Vision first. So I forgot about that for a little while, until the other shoe drops. So Vision found a cure. Apparently the Mind Stone can cure the virus, and he actually saved Scott. Well, he saved what's left of Scott, which was just a head.
Futurama.
There. Futurama head, basically the Nixon bottle.
Yep.
That's also something from the comics as well. I think Janet was saved, like her head was saved, and she was given like a robot body. So they have hope that things are going to get better. Bucky starts snooping around looking for transport, looking for a ship, and Vision said, "You're not going to find what you think I don't know what that means, but it's definitely ominous for him to say that. So we come upon T'Challa being snacked upon, basically, to keep Wanda alive.
That was disturbing. That was really disturbing. He had one leg left. I was like, that was very disturbing.
I guess he was feeding him to her slowly, because he was cut off at the knee. So so it's not like he did take giant chunks out of him. Half of a leg is a lot of meat, but he could have given a lot more of him to her. But yeah, I don't want to know how long he was in cutting on T'Challa. Because it's obvious that he's been doing it for a little while. So he accidentally breaks out Wanda, cracks her containment where he was containing her. And then she goes crazy after they realize what's happening, and they turn on Vision. And all the while, Scott is making dad jokes, which is which is yeah. I think he was probably the funniest part of this episode because he was making inappropriate jokes at very inappropriate times.
Yeah,
and he said it was because of the craziness of the situation. And now he's basically just a talking head now. So I guess this is how he's processing the craziness with quips and jokes. I wonder. So like in live action stuff, you can take a run at something and they'll just keep the funniest things, especially when you get a comedian like Paul Rudd. But I don't know what's the case. I don't know what the case is with animation. Do they let him record a bunch of things and then take his funniest jokes when he's in the booth, or I don't know?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how they actually do that. That's very interesting because, but by the same token, the stuff that I've watched in the animation, there's not really like jokesy type of things that I like comedy types of stuff that's happened in the animation that I've seen. It's definitely more. Basically my exposure is the DC animated universe, and I mean there's rarely any jokes there. I mean, in those films,
there's some jokes there, but I'm thinking of animation writ large. So we can talk about like Shrek. Shrek is a comedic movie, and there's lots of jokes in there, and they're all like professional comedians in that movie as well. I wonder if when they have a professional comedian, not even going further back, you talk about Aladdin. I can't imagine everything that Robin Williams said in that movie was scripted, because that's not how his mind works.
No.
That's not how his mind works. He just starts going off on random tangents. So I think they just went with the funniest stuff, and that's what showed up in the movie. And I think that's probably what they did with Scott's jokes here. He just said a bunch of random stuff. Paul Rudd said a bunch of random stuff, and they took some of the funnier things, and some of it was probably scripted.
Most probably that's going to be the case if you're looking at that.
Yeah. So then we get the quickest scene from Lehigh, because one is going crazy because she's unleashed, and she's not any less powerful than she was when she was a regular human.
Right.
And we see how the lengths that they go to for each other. She tortured a town, and then he basically cut up a man for her. So yeah, I can understand how she's going to be a villain in the next movie. They definitely go to extremes for each other, and she's going to go to extremes for her children in the next movie. So we shall see how extreme that is. He tries to repent and takes out the Mind Stone to give to the team so they can try to broadcast through Wakanda, because the only place that they could really broadcast that much information or globally is Wakanda technologically. So they find a Quinjet, they leave, or they try to leave. I think Bucky stays back to fight Wanda, and she like throws him like
miles and miles,
like a football field, like the length of a football field or longer, or further. I know he has super soldier serum, but I don't think he survived that.
I don't think he's going to survive that. That's
Yeah, and then Bruce stays behind as well, and he actually gets the Hulk to cooperate, because they could be the hero now. I guess he gets over his embarrassment of being beat down by Thanos, and he comes out and he goes. Then we see a very interesting like superhero fight that you usually see in the comics, like the Hulk versus the Scarlet Witch, and I really don't know who wins that, because the Hulk just gets madder and badder and stronger as like things get like thrown at him, but she's very powerful. So I don't know who wins that. They might crack that part of the Earth with their fight.
Yeah, but also could be like another one of those moments like from the last film, couple of episodes back, where he turns into mist. She'll come up with some type of dark magic and just like blows him up from the inside or something like that.
Maybe. Like I said, they're it seems like they have their powers and they have some level of intelligence, but they don't have their full faculties. So maybe that occurs to her, maybe it doesn't. But anyway, we only get to see the beginning of that fight, which was interesting enough. But then they zoom off to Wakanda, and then we get a very bleak ending, and we get a few more words from T'Challa, which is somewhat ominous and poignant, given that the words that they choose to have him say is that in my culture, death is not the end, which is, given that the Chadwick Boseman is dead. It's died last year. It was a very weird, I guess, poignant, but also weird thing to hear him say, or one of the last things to hear him say.
Yeah, but he'd also said that in Civil War when his father died. Actually,
Yes, I know, but this is one of the last things he recorded.
Right, exactly.
The last things that we're going to hear him say in film or whatchamacallit. Yeah, and then, like I said, they get to Wakanda, or like we said earlier, they get to Wakanda, and we don't, like I said, I don't know whether or not he's taken over or not, but it's not good because he has all the other stones. And I don't know how he got the time stone, because the time stone was still in New York and both of his people are dead. All right, so maybe he went there to get it himself or whatever, because the time stone was still around the neck of Doctor Strange, and they just left New York. So maybe he went back to New York when they were in New Jersey. I don't know, but he has all the stones except for the Mind Stone, and they're flying the Mind Stone to him. Yeah,
very bleak ending, and overall just some fun moments. Definitely. I would say it's probably my favorite episode so far. The Doctor Strange one was very good too. Not to say that the other, and also the T'Challa going to space one was really good too. They've just been going really. It's been going really well with What If. I think that the storytelling's been really awesome. I think that just the different types of interpretations of the characters and their interactions have been very solid. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to what comes next in terms. I think there's we're halfway through, right? I believe
this is 5. You said?
Yeah,
we're more than halfway through because there's only going to be 9 episodes. They made 10, but they're going to keep one of them for the beginning of the next season.
Got it.
So there's only 9 episodes, so we're past the halfway point, and they haven't disappointed the entire time. So it's great. It's great, and I'm looking forward to the last couple episodes. I know that there's a Thor episode coming up, and I thought that was going to be this week because that's what the internet said it was going to be. But I think on Wednesday they actually preview what it's going to be on the Twitter account, the Marvel Twitter account. So if you're interested in what the next episode is going to be, just follow the Marvel Twitter account because they spoiled what was going to happen on Tuesday, which was a lot of notice, but if you're really interested, you can find out. Then, so there's a Thor episode, there's a Killmonger, Tony Stark episode, and then there's an episode where there's obviously a team-up. So there's 4 more episodes, or there's a team-up between the multiverses, because we see the evil or the evil ish or whatever. The Doctor Strange that destroyed his universe. The darker version. The one who destroyed his universe. We see him arrayed with other heroes like Star-Lord, T'Challa, and Captain Carter fighting against something. And maybe it's going to be, I don't know, do you think it might be this virus? Do you think that maybe Thanos, instead of snapping people out of existence, snapped himself to other universes so he could eat, like him and his zombie horde could eat other existences? That would be
that's a good theory. I think that I've seen some stuff online that it might be Ultron with the Infinity Stones, with the Gauntlet. So that's what's been rumored. I don't know if that is the case, but I've also seen that I saw a Hyundai commercial about 2 days ago. He was Ultron with the Gauntlet, and his robot army was pretty prominent in that What If thing. So I have a suspicion it's going to be that, but that's car commercial. So they've been
interesting. Can he even wield the Gauntlet, the Infinity Stones? Does he have a soul? I know.
Vision. I'm not quite sure as to how that's going to.
Yeah.
But it's been done I think it's been done in the Ultimate comic series that Ultron did have exposure to the Gauntlet. I think. Okay. I'm not 100% sure on that. Yeah.
That would be interesting. I don't know. What would he want? Seeing as how he was trying to wipe out the Earth anyway, would he want that wouldn't be pretty much the same as what Thanos wanted, which was
but I think that if I recall from Age of Ultron, he wanted basically humanity to be wiped out, and all of humanity wiped out. But basically, that was his moment of peace in terms of artificial intelligence taking over the Earth. I think that was basically his premise for Age of Ultron.
So instead of
slightly different from half the universe.
Okay, instead of half of the universe, he wants to get rid of all life and replace it with synthetic life. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, I guess that could be his goal. But if he has the Gauntlet, I'm not sure how they're going to stop. If you only have half, if you have half, you have at least half of the people around to stop Thanos or undo what Thanos does. If he gets the snap off, everyone's gone. So I guess we'll see.
But I think that the snap itself could be based on whatever they put in their minds. Because if you recall that when Tony Stark did it and when the Hulk did it, it was for different reasons rather than with Thanos. I think it was just the power of it, and then I think
no, I understand that. What I'm saying is though, if Ultron's desire is that everyone dies, that happens immediately, and then there's no one there to undo what he did.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So,
yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah, I really like the episode, but I guess we should move on. Well, folks, that's the end of the review. If you found it useful, please give us a like. And also, if you want more reviews like this, remember to subscribe. All right, we'll see you next time.